Emily had been dreaming of her wedding since she was a little girl. She imagined the flowers, the music, the guests clapping as she walked down the aisle in her gown, and the look in her groom's eyes as he promised to love her forever. Now, after months of careful planning, that dream was about to come true. The estate where the wedding would take place looked like something out of a storybook. Tall arches of white roses lined the pathway, golden ribbons hung from the chandeliers, and the sweet smell of fresh lilies filled the air. Everywhere she looked, Emily saw details she had chosen with her own hands. From the lace on the tablecloths to the soft piano music in the background, everything was perfect. Emily was a kind-hearted woman, simple in her manners despite the wealth she had married into. She came from a modest family, but Daniel, her fiancé, was from a powerful and wealthy background. He owned several businesses and often moved in circles filled with influential people. To her, he was charming, confident, and caring, or at least he seemed to be. She believed that with him, she had found stability and a love she could trust. Grace, the maid in the estate, was someone Emily grew especially close to during the preparations. Grace had been working for Daniel's family for years. She was dedicated, polite, and always ready to help. When Emily stressed over the guest list or panicked about small details like flowers arriving late, Grace was the one who calmed her down. Emily often shared her worries with Grace, treating her like a confidant. In many ways, she felt Grace was more like a sister than a servant. Their bond made Emily feel supported when the pressure of wedding planning weighed on her. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with excitement. Guests arrived from distant places, bringing with them laughter, chatter, and expensive gifts. Emily's relatives were overjoyed to see her marrying into such wealth, and Daniel's family was proud to welcome a bride who, though simple, carried herself with grace and kindness. Everyone admired Emily's soft smile and gentle nature. She wasn't someone who tried to shine brighter than others, but her sincerity made her glow naturally. On the morning before the wedding, Emily spent time with her bridesmaids, who teased her about the new life she was about to start. They painted her nails, adjusted her gown, and made jokes about how Daniel would spoil her endlessly after marriage. Emily laughed with them, her heart filled with hope. She thought of the promises Daniel had made, a life of love, loyalty, and partnership. She held on to those promises, believing them to be as strong as the vows they would soon exchange. Daniel, meanwhile, played the role of a charming groom perfectly. He entertained the guests, checked on arrangements, and spoke sweetly to Emily whenever she crossed his path. To everyone, they looked like a couple deeply in love, ready to start their journey together. No one could see the hidden cracks that lay just beneath the surface. That evening, after a long day of rehearsals and celebration dinners, Emily walked through the estate, soaking in the beauty of the place. She looked at the tall windows glowing with soft light, the marble floors shining like mirrors, and the garden filled with fairy lights. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, this will be the most beautiful day of my life." She believed every word. In her heart, Emily carried gratitude for everyone who had helped bring her dream to life. She thought of Grace again, remembering how the maid had stayed late nights ironing her gown and making sure every detail was perfect. Emily even planned to gift her something special after the wedding, a gesture of thanks for all her support. She didn't know that Grace was carrying a secret, one that would turn Emily's world upside down. The night was peaceful. Emily sat by her window in her room, watching the moonlight fall over the gardens. Her heart raced with excitement as she thought about the next morning. She imagined herself walking down the aisle, Daniel smiling at her with love in his eyes. She imagined their guests standing in admiration. She felt safe in the picture she had created in her mind, not realizing that her dream was built on a fragile truth that could shatter at any moment. The estate buzzed with life, but Emily retreated into her thoughts. She whispered prayers for a happy marriage, for loyalty, and for a bond that would last a lifetime. She believed her prayers would be answered. With that hope, she went to bed, unaware that the happiness she longed for was already slipping away. This was the calm before the storm. Behind the closed doors of the estate, secrets were hidden in the shadows. Secrets that Emily would stumble upon sooner than she could imagine. But for now, she slept peacefully, clutching onto her dreams of love, trust, and forever. The morning sun touched the windows of the estate, spilling golden light into the rooms. The wedding day had finally arrived. Emily woke up with her heart racing. She could hear the laughter of guests outside, the clinking of glasses, and the footsteps of staff rushing to prepare everything for the ceremony. Her bridesmaids hurried in with cheerful faces, ready to help her dress. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Emily smiled as they adjusted her gown and pinned her veil, but inside, she felt a nervous flutter. It wasn't fear, it was the overwhelming excitement of a bride about to take her vows. Everyone around her was full of energy, offering her compliments and reminding her how perfect everything looked. "You'll be the most beautiful bride today," one whispered. Emily laughed softly and blushed, thankful for their support. While the bride's side was busy with last-minute touches, the groom's side seemed equally joyful. Daniel was seen greeting guests, shaking hands, and giving instructions to the staff. He wore a polished smile, his suit fitting him perfectly, as if nothing in the world could disturb his confidence. Everyone praised him as a gentleman, a successful man, and soon-to-be husband. To most eyes, he looked like the ideal groom. But beneath the polished charm, there were cracks Emily had yet to notice. Later that afternoon, Emily realized she had forgotten a bracelet her mother had gifted her years ago. It was a simple but meaningful piece of jewelry, something she wanted to wear on her wedding day as a token of love from her family. She decided to retrieve it from Daniel's room, where she had placed it for safekeeping the night before. She thought it would be a quick walk just in and out. Emily moved quietly through the hallways, holding up her gown so it wouldn't catch on the steps. She smiled to herself, thinking about how Daniel would react when he saw her walking down the aisle. She imagined his eyes filling with admiration, his smile warm with love. These thoughts filled her with comfort as she reached his door. She knocked lightly, expecting silence or perhaps Daniel himself opening the door. But instead, she heard muffled voices inside. At first, she thought it was just Daniel talking to one of the groomsmen. She didn't want to intrude, so she turned to leave. Then the sound of laughter caught her attention, soft, intimate laughter. It was a woman's voice. Her hand froze on the door handle. The sound made her uneasy, but curiosity pushed her forward. Slowly, she turned the knob and opened the door just enough to see inside. What she saw made her entire body stiffen. Daniel was not alone. He was close to someone, too close. And that someone was Grace. Emily's heart dropped as she saw Daniel's arms around the maid, the same woman she had trusted deeply. Grace's eyes were closed, her face filled with affection, while Daniel whispered something that made her laugh. It was not the casual closeness of two people, it was the intimacy of betrayal. Emily stood frozen at the door, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were showing her. Her heart pounded so hard she thought she might faint. The world around her seemed to fade, and all she could hear was the sound of their voices. She wanted to scream, to cry, but no words came out. She simply stared, her body trembling, her breath caught in her throat. After what felt like an eternity, Daniel noticed her. His eyes widened, his smile vanished, and panic washed over his face. Grace turned, and when she saw Emily, she quickly pulled away, her expression full of guilt. "Emily, it's not what you think," Daniel stammered, stepping toward her. His voice was shaky, desperate. But Emily could not hear him clearly. Everything around her felt heavy and distant, as if she were standing in a dream she desperately wanted to wake up from. The man she was about to marry had betrayed her, and with the very person she had trusted the most. Grace tried to speak, her words tumbling out in fragments. "Emily. I I didn't mean for this to happen, please, let me explain. Her eyes were wet with tears, but her excuses only deepened the pain. Emily raised her hand to silence them both. Her lips pressed tightly together, her face pale, she turned and walked away without a word. Each step felt like walking through fire, her gown brushing the floor as if dragging the weight of her broken heart. She reached her room and shut the door, leaning against it as tears finally poured down her face. The world she had built in her mind, the perfect wedding, the promises of love, all collapsed in that single moment. She felt a wave of grief, anger, and disbelief. She pressed her face into her hands, sobbing quietly, her gown wrinkling beneath her. But as the minutes passed, her sorrow began to shift. Slowly, painfully, her tears turned into a fire inside her chest. She wiped her face, her hands trembling, but her eyes began to harden with determination. She thought about the guests waiting downstairs, the hundreds of eyes that would soon turn to her and Daniel at the altar. She thought about the speeches, the music, the laughter, and the way everyone admired him. A man who looked so perfect in public, but who had betrayed her trust in the most private way. Emily realized that calling off the wedding quietly would not be enough. Daniel's betrayal was not something to be hidden. She had given him her trust, her love, her future, and he had shattered it without hesitation. He deserved to be exposed, and he deserved to face the consequences in front of everyone he had fooled. She took a deep breath, her heart still heavy but her mind sharp. She would not collapse under this betrayal. She would not let her pain turn her into a victim. Instead, she would stand tall, and she would make sure Daniel and Grace understood the weight of what they had done. The gown that once symbolized joy now became her armor. The wedding that once promised love would now become the stage for her revenge. As the sun began to set and the music floated through the estate, Emily sat silently in her room, her face calm, her tears dried. No one knew what she had just witnessed, no one could guess what was about to happen. But Emily knew. And she was ready. The estate was alive with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Guests wandered through the decorated halls, complimenting each other on their attire and praising the grandeur of the wedding arrangements. To anyone watching, it looked like the perfect day, a celebration of love between two people from different worlds. But hidden behind her calm smile, Emily carried a storm that no one could see. She sat in front of the mirror as her bridesmaids adjusted her gown one final time. The white lace shimmered under the soft lights, her veil falling delicately across her shoulders. She looked radiant, but her heart felt heavy. She remembered what she had seen the night before Daniel with Grace. The image replayed in her mind like a wound that refused to close. Her heart still hurt, but her face showed no sign of the chaos inside her. She had made a decision, and she would carry it out no matter how hard it was. One of her bridesmaids, unaware of the truth, laughed and said, "Emily, Daniel will faint when he sees you walking down the aisle. You look like an angel." Emily smiled faintly, nodding in agreement, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She no longer saw Daniel as her groom. To her, he was a liar hiding behind charm. As she prepared to walk to the ceremony, she felt Grace's presence nearby. Grace was part of the staff, moving quietly among the guests, offering drinks and helping with arrangements. When their eyes met across the room, Grace quickly looked away, her face filled with guilt. Emily did not react. She simply held her head high and kept walking. Her silence was louder than any words she could have spoken. The grand hall was filled with guests dressed in glittering clothes, their faces glowing with excitement. Flowers decorated every corner, and soft music played from the string quartet. The aisle was lined with white petals, and the altar stood tall beneath a canopy of roses. Daniel waited there, smiling confidently as he greeted his friends and family. He looked like the picture of a perfect groom. Nobody could guess that behind his smile was a secret that could destroy everything. When the music changed, signaling the bride's entrance, the entire room fell silent. Everyone stood, their eyes turning toward the large doors at the back of the hall. Emily appeared, her gown sparkling under the lights, her veil catching the soft breeze. She walked slowly, gracefully, every step measured. To the guests, she looked like the happiest bride, but only she knew that each step was heavy with pain and purpose. Daniel's smile grew wider as she approached, as though nothing had happened. He looked at her with admiration, pretending that everything was perfect. Emily's heart tightened. She wondered how he could stand there so calmly after what he had done. But she didn't let her anger show. She kept her face composed, her eyes steady. Whispers filled the room as guests admired her beauty. Some leaned toward each other, saying, "She looks stunning," while others whispered about how lucky Daniel was. Nobody suspected that beneath her calm appearance was a plan that would change the entire course of the day. When Emily reached the altar, Daniel reached out to take her hand. For a moment, she hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His palm felt warm, but it no longer gave her comfort. It reminded her of betrayal. She stood tall, her veil covering her expression, as the priest began the ceremony. The priest spoke about love, trust, and faithfulness, words that cut deep into Emily's heart. She wanted to laugh at the irony, but she remained silent. Each word felt like a reminder of what Daniel had already broken. As the priest continued, Emily's eyes swept across the room. She saw faces of friends, family, and even business partners who looked up to Daniel as a man of honor. She knew the truth, and soon, they would know it too. Grace stood at the back, her eyes downcast, unable to look directly at the bride. Every so often, she glanced nervously toward the altar, as if waiting for something terrible to happen. Her guilt was visible to anyone who noticed, but most guests were too focused on the couple at the front. Emily's calmness surprised even herself. Though her heart was still wounded, her mind was sharp. She thought about everything Daniel had taken from her: the trust, the innocence of her love, the bond she thought they shared. She realized this moment was not just about her heartbreak, it was about truth. She could not let Daniel stand before everyone and pretend he was a loyal man. As the ceremony moved toward the vows, Daniel spoke first. His voice was smooth, confident, and filled with the charm that had won so many hearts. "Emily," he said, looking at her with what appeared to be love, "from the moment I met you, I knew my life would change forever. You are the light of my world, and today I promise to love you, honor you, and be faithful to you for the rest of my days." The guests sighed with admiration, some even tearing up at his words. Emily, however, stood motionless, her lips pressed tightly together. Inside, she burned with anger at his lies. She wondered how he could speak such words so easily, knowing what he had done just hours before. Now it was her turn to speak. The hall grew silent, waiting for the bride's vows. Emily looked at Daniel, her face calm, her eyes unreadable. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead of vows of love, she paused. Her silence stretched, making the room tense. Daniel looked at her nervously, his smile beginning to fade. Emily finally spoke, her voice steady and clear. "Before I make my vows, there is something everyone here should see." Gasps filled the room as she turned slightly, signaling to one of the staff. A projector was brought forward, and within moments, images filled the large screen behind them. Photos and recordings, proof of Daniel's betrayal. The laughter, the closeness, the whispers with Grace, everything was displayed for all to see. The guests erupted in shock. Murmurs spread across the hall like wildfire. Daniel's face turned pale, his confident smile gone. Grace covered her mouth in horror, her eyes wide with fear. The perfect image of the groom shattered in seconds. Emily stood tall in her gown, her voice steady as she said, "This is the man I was supposed to marry. This is the truth he tried to hide." The calm before the storm had ended. Now, the storm had arrived. Gasps echoed through the grand hall as the pictures on the screen flickered, showing Daniel and Grace together in moments that no one could mistake for innocence. Some guests covered their mouths in shock, while others whispered loudly, unable to believe what they were seeing. The string quartet stopped playing mid-note, their bows frozen in the air. All the beauty and harmony of the wedding hall turned heavy and tense, like a stage set for a tragedy. Emily stood tall at the altar, her veil slightly lifted, her eyes sharp and steady. She looked more like a queen than a bride in that moment. The crowd's murmurs rose higher, and Daniel's confident mask cracked. He reached toward the projector, his face pale and nervous. "Stop this," he shouted, his voice trembling, though he tried to sound commanding. But no one listened. The damage had already been done. Grace, standing at the back, tried to slip away, but the eyes of the guests followed her. She lowered her head, clutching her apron, shame written across her face. Emily didn't even glance at her. Her focus was on Daniel, the man who had betrayed her trust so carelessly. "Emily," Daniel began, his voice breaking. "Please, this isn't what it looks like. You don't understand. I love you. These are lies." His hands shook as he tried to explain, but his words only sounded hollow. Emily's calm voice cut through the noise of the hall. "Lies. These pictures and recordings speak louder than your words. On the night before our wedding, you chose to betray me. And worse, you betrayed me with someone I treated as family." Her gaze swept over the guests. "This is the man I was supposed to marry." The guests gasped again. A few shook their heads in disappointment, whispering, "How could he do this to her?" Others stared at Daniel, their respect for him dissolving with every second. Even members of his own family avoided his eyes, embarrassed and humiliated. Daniel stepped closer, desperation in his movements. "Emily, please. We can talk about this later, in private. Don't do this here. Don't embarrass me like this." Emily's laugh was soft but cold. "Embarrass you? You embarrassed yourself the moment you chose to betray me. I have nothing to hide. Why should I protect you when you showed me no respect?" The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of whispers spreading across the room. Emily lifted her chin higher, her courage glowing brighter than any jewel she wore. Turning to the guests, she spoke with clarity and strength. "To everyone here, I thank you for coming to witness what should have been my happiest day. But today, instead of becoming Daniel's wife, I will choose a different path. A path where I will not live under lies and betrayal. I would rather walk away alone with dignity than stay by the side of someone who cannot be faithful." The room erupted in murmurs again. Some clapped softly, admiring her bravery, while others remained silent, shocked at the turn of events. Daniel fell to his knees in front of her, ignoring the guests. His voice cracked with desperation. "Emily, please, don't leave me like this. I made a mistake, but I can fix it. I need you. I love you. Please forgive me." His tears fell, but Emily's heart no longer softened at his sight. She looked down at him, her eyes filled with both sadness and strength. "Love without trust is nothing. And I will not start my marriage on broken promises. You chose your path, Daniel. And today, I choose mine." With those words, Emily slowly removed the ring he had given her. The crowd gasped as she placed it back in his hand. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Daniel looked at the ring, his face pale and empty, realizing he had lost everything. Emily then turned away from the altar. Her gown swept gracefully across the floor as she walked down the aisle, no longer a bride waiting for love but a woman reclaiming her strength. Every step echoed with determination. The guests parted silently, giving her space as she passed. Some reached out, touching her hand gently in support, whispering words of admiration. The hall erupted into chaos behind her. Daniel shouted, trying to defend himself, but no one believed him anymore. Grace was surrounded by angry stares, her reputation ruined in front of everyone. The music that once promised joy now hung like a broken note in the air. Emily reached the doors of the hall and stopped for a moment. She turned back, her voice strong enough for everyone to hear. Today was supposed to be the beginning of a marriage. Instead, it has become the beginning of my freedom. Let this be a reminder: no matter how grand the hall, no matter how many flowers, a wedding means nothing without truth. Her words struck the hearts of everyone present. Many nodded, moved by her strength. Some even clapped loudly, breaking the tension with their applause. Emily didn't wait for more. She stepped outside into the evening air, her veil fluttering in the wind, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. As she walked toward the car waiting outside, she felt a strange calmness wash over her. Yes, her heart was broken, but she no longer felt weak. She had faced the truth, spoken it out loud, and walked away with her head held high. Daniel could keep his wealth, his charm, and his lies. She had something more valuable now: her dignity. Inside the hall, the noise of chaos grew louder. Guests questioned Daniel, some condemning him openly. His family looked at him with disappointment. Grace stood alone, her tears silent, realizing the cost of her betrayal. The wedding that was meant to lift Daniel higher had instead destroyed his reputation in one stroke. But outside, Emily felt a quiet peace. She knew her life was about to change. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be hers, honest and free. And as she looked at the horizon, she promised herself that this ending would not break her. It would be the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would never again allow anyone to make her feel small. The ultimate revenge had been served not through anger, not through harsh words, but through truth spoken at the perfect moment. Emily didn't just leave the wedding. She left with power. The doors of the grand hall closed behind Emily, and the noise of chaos slowly faded. Outside, the cool evening air touched her face, carrying away the heavy scent of roses and perfume that had filled the ceremony. For the first time that day, she could breathe freely. The weight on her chest was still there, but it felt lighter with every step she took away from the altar. She wasn't leaving as a broken bride, she was leaving as a woman who had chosen her dignity over deception. A black car waited at the entrance. The driver, confused but respectful, opened the door for her. Emily stepped inside, her gown filling the back seat, her veil brushing against the leather. As the car pulled away, she glanced back at the estate one last time. The lights twinkled in the distance, the music had stopped, and shadows moved frantically across the windows. That place was supposed to hold her happiest memory, but instead, it became the stage of her greatest betrayal and her greatest act of courage. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Dozens of missed calls and messages appeared on the screen. Daniel had called her repeatedly, his words desperate, begging her to return. Some of her bridesmaids messaged, shocked and worried, asking what had happened. A few guests sent her words of support, praising her strength. Emily turned the phone off. She needed silence. She needed space to think about her life beyond the wedding that never was. When she arrived back at her family's home, her mother rushed to her side, tears in her eyes. "Emily, what happened? People are calling, saying you stopped the wedding." Emily hugged her mother tightly, her own tears finally flowing again. "I couldn't marry him, Mama. He betrayed me." Her voice cracked but carried no regret. "I saw the truth with my own eyes." Her mother held her close, stroking her hair like she did when Emily was a child. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "Better to stop now than live a lifetime of lies. You are stronger than you know." Her father, though silent at first, placed a firm hand on her shoulder. His eyes, filled with both sorrow and pride, met hers. Walking away was not easy. But sometimes the hardest choice is the most honorable one. "I am proud of you, Emily." Her family's support wrapped around her like a blanket. The pain was still raw, but she no longer felt alone. That night, she sat by the window in her childhood room, her gown folded carefully on the chair, her veil resting on the table. She looked at the stars, her heart aching yet steady. The life she imagined with Daniel was gone, but the future stretched out before her, full of possibilities she had yet to discover. Days turned into weeks. The story of the ruined wedding spread quickly among society circles. Newspapers whispered about the shocking scene, and business partners began questioning Daniel's character. His reputation, once polished, grew tarnished with each retelling. Many distanced themselves from him, unwilling to be linked to scandal. Grace, the maid, quietly left the estate, unable to bear the shame. No one knew where she went, and few cared to ask. Meanwhile, Emily's story spread as well, but in a different light. People admired her courage. They praised her for exposing the truth instead of hiding it. Many young women saw her as a symbol of strength, someone who chose self-respect over wealth and appearances. Strangers even wrote her letters, thanking her for showing that dignity mattered more than luxury. At first, Emily struggled with the sudden attention. She hadn't exposed Daniel for fame or praise, she had done it to free herself from lies. But as time passed, she began to understand that her decision had inspired others. That gave her a new sense of purpose. She decided not to rush into another relationship. Her heart was still healing, and she wanted to rebuild herself before trusting anyone else. Instead, she focused on her career and passions. She had studied design and always dreamed of opening her own boutique. With her family's encouragement, she finally took the leap. She rented a small shop in town and began creating dresses that reflected her love for beauty and strength. The shop quickly attracted attention, not just for the elegance of her work but also for the story behind it. Clients admired her resilience and wanted to support her. Soon, her boutique grew, and Emily found herself surrounded by people who respected her for who she truly was, not for the man she was supposed to marry. One evening, as she closed her shop, she looked at the gowns hanging neatly on the racks. Each dress felt like a symbol of her journey, a reminder that beauty could be created even from broken pieces. She smiled, realizing she had found happiness in a place she never expected. Months later, she attended a charity event in the city. Dressed in one of her own designs, she walked confidently into the hall. Many guests recognized her, whispering about the bride who had walked away with such grace. Some approached her, complimenting her work and her courage. Emily smiled politely, no longer bothered by the whispers. To her surprise, she also saw Daniel at the event. His once proud face now looked worn, his charm dulled. He approached her hesitantly, his voice softer than she had ever heard. "Emily. I've lost everything. I know I hurt you, and I can never undo it. But I just want to say I'm sorry." Emily looked at him calmly, her heart steady. "I don't hate you, Daniel. But I don't need you in my life. I've found peace without you." She turned and walked away, her head held high, leaving him behind just as she had on the day of the wedding. The difference was, this time, she felt no pain, only freedom. In the months that followed, Emily's boutique flourished. She built a life filled with meaning, surrounded by family, friends, and her own accomplishments. She learned that happiness didn't come from someone else's promises, it came from within. The day she was supposed to be a bride became the day she discovered her true strength. And while the memory of betrayal would always remain, it no longer defined her. What defined her now was resilience, courage, and the ability to turn pain into power. Emily didn't just walk away from a marriage. She walked into a future she had built with her own hands.